Hey, everybody, this is Mike, and you're watching the Reelblack podcast. We have a very, very special guest with us today, my good friend, VQ. How you
Yes,
doing, my
sir.
man?
What's going on, Mike?
Well, we're here to do a little mini review of a movie that was released, long anticipated for years. It was out of print on DVD, had a very short run. It was going for collector's prices, and then our friends at MVD Visual made it available.
Yeah, here we
Panther.
go. Panther.
So VQ and I, Vashsawn Quinones, and I both have had a chance to check out the new MVD MGM release of this
This is
1995 classic, in my opinion. But we're gonna go at it.
yes.
So I mean, first thoughts. I'll read the back of the box
Okay.
to get us into it. A time of tension, of rioting in the streets, a time of change in Oakland, California, 1968. The Black Panthers, led by Huey Newton, played by Marcus Strong of The Matrix, and Bobby Seale, Courtney B. Vance of The Preacher's Wife, have armed themselves and are ready to fight for freedom to the people. They're heroes, but to the FBI, they're public enemy number one. Now the feds will do everything they can on the right or the wrong side of the law to bring them down. This is
Oh, wow.
Panther, which
Panther.
is written by Melvin and Mary Van Peebles, screenplay by Melvin Van Peebles, based on his novel Panther, directed by his son Mario Van Peebles.
Right.
This is a long anticipated. I guess Posse was between this and New Jack City, but
Right
I mean,
after.
what do you? Oh, Posse came after Panther. This
No,
is the
no, no,
follow.
no. Well, no, it was New Jack City, Posse, and then Panther.
And then Panther. Okay,
Right.
so
We're not going to include the gunman though.
so
or Solo, yeah.
so what are your thoughts first of the DVD presentation and then of the film itself?
Well, I'm going to say it's definitely not worth $20.
You're not a fan, but people were paying hundreds of dollars for this thing on DVD. It was
Well,
out of
okay.
print. They said
It was out
there's the system is conspired to keep this movie away from the people,
or
and
the
it felt that
Gramercy
way
shut
until this
down.
release.
Yeah. Well, okay. Let me say this. As far as the Blu-ray is concerned, there's not much on here. I would love to have had, Mario Van Peebles' commentary on there. Possibly the two music videos that were for the movie. Was it the 10 Points with Biggie and Busta, and then they had the Freedom song with Queen
The
Latifah.
choir. Yeah.
Right. So I would love to have seen that, and maybe I think if I'm not mistaken, I think HBO may have had like a behind the scenes, little 30-minute special. I would have loved to have seen, but all in all, you just get a trailer. I thought the transfer was okay, not great, but it is good to have in your collection if you're
It's got the
a fan
reversible
of
art.
right reversible art. But if you're a fan of black movies, definitely want to have it in your collection.
Yeah. Well, I can't disagree with the bang for your buck. The value of the presentation
Right.
does leave a lot to be desired. But, I give MVD credit for releasing it. I would love to see it have come out day and date with Walking Dead, which is another sort of would-be lost film from that time period, from Gramercy Savoy Pictures, I guess, one of the Polygram titles.
Right.
But yeah, the transfer looks like it's a bump up. It's not a new transfer by any means. It's not a 4K transfer. It's basically the least they could possibly do to make the film available.
Right.
So yeah, but we're giving a copy away, so that's a good thing.
Right.
Now the film itself, I think we have differing opinions about the film itself. Now I guess people were expecting a lot more, coming from New Jack City to Panther.
Right.
Does it hold up after all these years?
And unfortunately, it does not hold up.
Okay.
Here's the thing: when this movie came out, I was so eager to see this. I really wanted to see it. I remember, I think at the same time, I think maybe Friday had come out around the same time. Um, didn't see it in theaters, missed it. It came out on video. I was working at Blockbuster at the time, and I was like, "Oh man, I definitely got to see this." Right. So I remember renting Panther and Friday, same time, and being disappointed with Panther.
Hmm.
I understand its importance. It's definitely a story that needs to be told, but I thought some of the performances were great in some areas. Like I thought Courtney B. Vance was good, and the brother who played Eldridge Cleaver did a good job, did a damn good job. And I felt like when those two gentlemen were on screen together, you see fire. These
Hmm.
gentlemen like giving it the best their acting. But unfortunately, though, Marcus Chong was kind of the weak link for me as Huey Newton, right? Um, I felt like maybe Roger Guenveur Smith could have pulled it off.
Hmm.
I thought
And
some
he
of
did pull it off. He
he
did
did
his
pull it
own one
off.
man show.
Yeah, but see, we didn't know that at the time.
Right.
We didn't know that he was doing the one man show.
Right.
So looking now, I'm like, well, you should have casted him. I think his performance would have been excellent. Um, there were some blemishes in there in terms of sometimes the comedy between here we go between Chris Rock and Bobby Brown were a little too much for me to take too seriously. There was a lot of silliness going on, and I kind of felt like the movie went into three directions. It started off as a biopic on the Panthers, which you got maybe the first maybe 30 to 40 minutes of the film, because the movie is about what 2 hour 1 minute,
Hmm.
over 2 hours.
Well,
Then
two
in the
hours and
second
four. Yeah.
right, then the second part it becomes what we see now in the Judah and the Messiah, right? Kind
Hmm.
of this,
Like a Donnie
seeing
Brasco kind of thing. Yeah.
FBI, infiltrating the Panthers, and then the third act becomes kind of an anti-drug movie and becomes kind of a shoot 'em up bit. So it's kind of all over the place. You have so many things going on that it kind of loses direction a bit. Um, you know, really the main problem, at least for me, is that you could have had solid actors in some of these roles, and some of the parts in there, it was like it's just like, okay, we gotta have a cameo here, we gotta have a cameo here. It kind of felt like the same problem within Panther. You just
Right. So
jump in
for
and
a
get
topic as
cameos in.
serious as
Right.
Panther, you want it should have some integrity in terms of the portrayals. And
Well,
I
that and I just felt like you have a lot going on and you're trying to tell it in a matter of 2 hours.
I can't disagree with you on any of those points, but
Yeah.
in some ways, I think that's how the movie retains its charm. I think the movie is worth checking out for
Mhm,
people who are fans of Bobby Brown and fans of
mhm,
Chris Rock and fans
mhm,
of Mark Curry,
mhm,
Mr. Cooper, just to
mhm,
see
mhm.
Kumo D, in these small
Right.
little roles,
Right.
to help Dick Gregory,
Mhm.
these small little
Rest in
roles,
peace.
rest in
Right.
peace, yeah, you know, to get an understanding. But yeah,
Mhm,
I do think it wavers away. I can see why Bobby Seale would be offended by this movie,
mhm.
because it's kind of all over the place, like you
Right.
said. Also in the music choices,
Right.
like they'll have songs from 68, but then
Mhm,
they'll jump into, you know, Let's Straighten It Out by Lattimore being
mhm.
covered by some new
Right.
90s R&B artist,
Right.
So it totally takes the I don't know what year we're in, or if we're jumping
Right.
through a bunch of years,
Right.
because the music references are kind of all over the place. Um, I think its heart was in the right place,
Mhm.
and in terms of being an anti-drug movie or trying to
Right.
contextualize the importance of Black Panthers
Right.
to what the 90s renaissance was
Mhm.
of Black consciousness was about.
Right.
Um, yeah, it's not entirely successful. It's not a classic. It's not a masterpiece by any
Mhm.
by any stretch.
Mhm.
But you know, how many movies do we get to see Kadeem Hardison in a leading role? You know,
Right. Right.
I always liked him on Different World. I would have loved to have seen him in more movies, you know, and this is the artifact that we get.
Right.
Mario, I go back and forth
Right.
on him as a director. I mean, if you're a New Jack City fan,
Which I am.
this probably is not
Yeah.
does not support him as far as, I mean, it brings out, I think he took what he liked about his strengths as a director from New Jack City and transfer them into this. You know, it's kind of flashy. I kind of like the use of the mixed film textures and things like that, but it also at the same time, I think they're trying to make something that was more MTV and not TV.
But you gotta understand something too, Mike. At the time, I'm not gonna touch on New Jack City just yet. By the way, the
Sure.
anniversary is tomorrow for New Jack City.
As we record this, yeah.
Right. Right. Two influential movies that were happening at the time, especially around 1991, possibly even 92. One was JFK and one was Malcolm X. And you see where Mario Van Peebles, from a director style, is trying to blend those two movies together, those styles, stylistically. Because remember, Oliver Stone was using black and white scenes during the assassination of JFK, or past scenes in black and white, and it had this real choppy, real fast way of moving. You definitely see Mario Van Peebles was trying to emulate that style in Panther. But also too, because Malcolm X was such a must-see movie, you do see, okay, well, let me try to have some of that flavor of Spike Lee was bringing by having Angela Bassett play Bae Shabazz again. So, he's taking these two iconic movies and trying to, I don't dare I use the word universe it, but, definitely pay homage to those two films that were, the quintessential 90s must-see controversial films of that time, or early 90s. I don't think Mario Van Peebles is a bad director, but I think sometimes when you look at New Jack City, I think there was so much that he could do on a budget. And I think he was surrounded with a great crew. You had a wonderful script by Barry Michael Cooper, and you had all of, I mean, you had the talent there. And there's so much he can do. Whereas I feel like, Posse and even in Panther, he was given a lot more leeway. And you probably need someone to say, hey, you know what, that's not working there. You might want to fall back on that, because there are certain scenes in Panther where I'm not opposed to humor in movies, being drama, whatever. But it got to the point where it was so slapstick that I couldn't take any rest of it seriously.
Understood.
In certain areas. And when you have a Chris Rock or you have a Bobby Brown, when they doing their scenes together, I get a sense that Mario Van Peebles like, oh man, whatever's not working on the page, go for it.
Just make it up.
Just make it up. And it's like
ad lib, yeah.
You probably need to tone it down a bit.
Yeah, there are a lot of comedians in there. AJ Johnson's in the movie as well.
Right. Who becomes like the main villain, if you will. One of the villains of the film.
Should be selling drugs in the hood.
Right. But then, you have Dr. Guinevere Smith, who's FBI working in conjunction with the mafia.
Yeah. No, I was just looking for my copy of Posse.
Oh, man. Yep.
Family Dollar. Bobby Seale lived in Philadelphia for some time. I made a movie with him.
Okay.
A cooking show with him, and I got to know him really well. And I know he was very disappointed by this movie.
Right.
And when I see it again, I can understand why, because it makes Bobby Seale and Huey Newton seem like they just kind of happened upon this idea of Black Panthers, and just because of the streets needed or whatever. And so the whole idea of that they present in the movie Panther is that these guys are just minding their business. They saw some police brutality and decided to take a stand. But the reality is that, uh, you know, it was orchestrated. Bobby Seale was a planner, and he had planned the idea for the Black Panthers 5 or 6 years before their implementation.
Right.
After hearing a speech by Martin Luther King,
Right.
so that's left out for the more conventional narrative of, and I think it leads audiences or people who might be inspired by this story into a false belief system. So but it's not a documentary.
Right.
We know that going in, it's not a documentary, but I think it should be noted that they took some liberties in that respect, with in terms of the opening sequences and the birth of the Black Panthers. It's totally fabricated the way they do it.
Right. And I knew going in a lot of these movies are not going to be 100 in terms of their depiction. But my thing is, with the writing and its execution, even with Panther, you have in that movie, Posse, you have two movies in one, and you kind of wondering, which direction was Mario going to go with it? Is this a revenge movie? Is this a Men on a Mission movie? So, but they don't necessarily mesh well. That's been a complaint about that film, and the same thing exists in this movie. You had three ideas going on, but none of them really mesh very well. It starts off as a typical biopic, and then it gets into the Kadeem story, and then boom, at the end, we're thrust into the anti-drug movie.
Get the drugs off the streets
Right. And
sequences.
so that's one of the issues that I had with the film, it's like
Okay.
what direction did you want to take this story? It needs a much more straightforward linear movie.
So, final thoughts. I mean, my
Mhm.
feeling is that as a completist that
Yeah.
wants to have a strong Black film collection,
Mhm.
the fact that this is out on Blu-ray for the very first time, it's
Mhm.
a worth getting.
Right. Yeah, I get it.
But as if we're going to go through the classics of early 90s Black cinema,
Mhm.
in retrospect, maybe there's a reason why this was left out of print for so long. I'll
Right.
give you that much. I'll give you
Right.
that much.
Right.
But
But you did bring up a good point though. Panther and Walking Dead would have worked as a double for this.
yeah,
You could have had both those movies on one. It then been worth the price of $20. But what's also interesting too is that how many times we've talked about dead presidents.
oh God.
We talked about dead presidents so much, right? Offline, but
Mhm.
I kind of felt like dead presidents took the best of what was missing in Panther and took what was missing in The Walking Dead. That's the Vietnam movie. We're not talking about the zombie movie, y'all.
Right.
And took both those elements and combined them.
And that's
Not
another one
perfect,
that's missing in action.
right? But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's like so I kind of felt like even though that movie is missing in action, but you could still get a physical copy of Dead Presidents on DVD, or you can buy it on stream.
Right.
Kind of made this movie Panther and Walking Dead kind of fall to the wayside a
Mhm.
little bit, kind of shadowed it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if we're going to talk about movies from 1995 specifically, there's a lot of stuff that could
Right.
be on Blu-ray that isn't, Black
Mhm.
film related. That was a big year for Black independent film,
Mhm.
and I guess we're happy Panther's out. We'd love to see a Blu-ray, a quality Blu-ray edition of Dead Presidents for sure, and
Kino
certainly,
Lorber, come on now, Kino. We know you
well,
got the
it's
you
a
got the
Disney. Oh, that's right. They had the Disney Connect for a minute. Yeah.
yeah. So they can put it out. Or what other little company? Shout, possibly.
Yeah.
So yeah, we definitely need a Dead Presidents Blu-ray. or possibly a Panther Blu-ray other than this one, where we can get that commentary from
Yeah,
Martin
commentary
Mayfield.
would have been nice, MVD. All right,
Yeah.
so if you watch this long, you may as well know we're giving away a copy. One lucky viewer send me an email. I'll make a separate video about it as well. So
All right.
Panther, from our friends at MVD.
Mhm.
So I guess we're giving this what 2.5 stars, something like that. Could be better or less than that. What are you saying?
I'll give it 2.5.
Yeah. So for completists like
Yes.
myself, I'm
Mhm.
so excited that Panther has finally made it to Blu-ray
Yeah.
after a long absence of being available in any format.
Yeah.
We're grateful for that, and I think it's kind of fun to see Baba Dick in an acting role. I think it's kind of cool. I don't mind Marcus Strong, but I understand what you mean by Roger Guinevere Smith.
Mhm.
It's a pop movie. It would have been nice to see the music videos. I agree.
Mhm.
Um, as a bare bones Region A release,
Right.
uh, it may be slightly overpriced, but the early pressings do have the slip cover,
Right.
and I know people like that stuff too. So let's
Absolutely.
grab it now while you can.
Absolutely. Absolutely.